I'm Chris Parker. This is Kristen Ishihara. We're at the Ishihara and Parker Law Firm here in Longview, Texas. And today we want to cover some of the numbers that have been updated by Texas Medicaid concerning basically long-term care at Texas nursing homes.
Sure. Everything changes every year. So this is just 2024 numbers, probably more interesting to our skilled nursing facility folks that are in the Medicaid world rather than our just average listener. But you're welcome. You're welcome as well.
That's right. So as we go through the numbers, let's kind of start at the top. When we're talking Texas Medicaid, usually the first case we talk about would be the simplest, where we have a single individual applying for nursing home care. One of the tests that Texas Medicaid looks at is they will test their monthly income. And for 2024, the monthly income limit has been raised to $2,829. $2,829. What that means is if you are a single individual, you are not married, you can apply for Texas Medicaid, and if your income, your gross income, not what actually hits your bank account, but your gross income is less than $2,829, then you will have passed the income test, right? You'll still lose your income minus some things you get to keep to the facility as a copayment, but you'll have passed the income test. And of course, the reverse side of that is if your income is greater, if your monthly gross income is greater than $2,829, it's a solvable problem by doing what's called a Miller's Trust or a qualified income trust. Hopefully our facilities are aware of that and not turning people away. It may not make sense. If you make $10,000 a month, you may just decide to private pay. But if you made $3,000 a month and the facility costs $5,000 a month, you're in a bit of a pickle, and a Miller's Trust or a QIT would solve that problem.
Right. But always remember that if someone says you are over income for Medicaid, always a solvable problem.
Always
right?
solvable.
That is
That's
a benefit of living in Texas. Medicaid is a federal program, but the state of Texas gets to create the rules for Medicaid. So here in Texas, if you are over income by Medicaid standards, we can always solve that problem using what Chris just described. Also, this is not a comprehensive Medicaid video about all the things you need to do to be eligible. This is just an update of numbers, but income is just one of the tests. Resources for a single person did not change this year. If I'm a single person, I still can only have $2,000, less than $2,000 in countable resources. We've had some other Medicaid videos. We'll do some in the future, so we're not going to cover what countable resources are. But for the purpose of that test, for a single person, that number has stayed the same and has been the same for quite a while now, but it's $2,000 in countable resources. So for a single person, income plus resources, income changed, resources did not change.
What about the more exciting one for us, Kristen? What about when you are married?
Sure. So that is more exciting in general. But if I'm a married couple and applying for Medicaid, now this is the area where we want you to have the information, but you probably don't want to apply these rules yourselves. If a married couple has one spouse that needs skilled nursing or Medicaid, the test for them to create their resource limit is individualized. So like a single person, I can say their limit is $2,000. That's it. That's what it was last year. That's what it is this year. With a married couple, that limit is created individually for that couple. So for example, if I had a married couple and their countable resources were $100,000, there is a specific date that matters called your snapshot date. The first of the month when that person entered the facility, so maybe it's January 1st, countable resources were $100,000. For their spousal limit, they get to keep 1/2 of that. So their particular resource limit, we would calculate to be countable resources divided by 2. Their limit is now $50,000. But Chris and I can't say to you, if you're married, this is what your spousal limit would be. We would need all of your information. We would calculate that based on dates, based on character of assets, based on daily balance on that specific date, and then we calculate what your resource limit is. Now, how do those numbers change then every year? There's a minimum and a maximum amount. So if, for example, I am a married couple, I have one spouse in the facility, then the protected minimum this year is $30,828. So for our facility friends, if there is a married couple, one of them is in the facility and their countable resources are under $30,828 in 2024, they're eligible. You don't have to cut it in half. You don't have to do anything. That is under the protected minimum amount. What's the maximum? The maximum this year is $154,140. So if, for example, my friends had $350,000 in countable resources, their half is $175,000. Well, that's more than the maximum amount. So their actual resource limit is now $154,140, not the one half. So this is, again, information for you to have, but probably not apply yourself. This is a good example of when you need to come get qualified information. Let somebody else calculate and apply the rules for you, but do know they moved a little bit. So again, for the facility friends, $30,000, $828,000 is your safe amount. Anybody under that is going to be fine.
And of course, there's other ways to fix an asset problem or to calculate it. So that's why we don't want you doing this on their own. This is one way. There may be alternative methods which are much more advantageous. So please, if you're in a situation like this, come see someone who's in this field.
Right. I'd hate for you to misapply the information.
Yeah. We just give you the numbers, but please understand it's a little more complicated.
Right.
Next part we look at would be the community spouse. Remember, under Kristen's scenario, we have one of the spouses is needing long-term care. The other spouse is still at home in the community. And in that situation, the state of Texas is allowing the community spouse to always keep their income. So if their income is $1 a month, they keep it. If their income is $10,000 a month, they keep it. That should not affect the eligibility of the spouse in the facility. However, the state of Texas has provided additional safety net, if you would. If the spouse at home, if their income or monthly income is less than $3,853.50, a slight increase. If the spouse in the community, the one at home, if their monthly income is less than $3,853.50, they're able to keep their own income, and the spouse going to facility, if they have the available income, that income will be diverted to the spouse I just stated, so that their combined incomes are up to $3,853.50. So in other words, if between you and your spouse, y'all have a combined income equal to or greater than that number, the spouse at home should always keep their income and potentially get a portion of the spouse going to the facility's income.
I think sometimes it's helpful to understand the reason behind the rule for that. So Texas is saying they think the spouse staying in the community that's still living in the house, still got to eat, still got to pay the light bill, still got to pay their AC bill or heat bill. They think that you need that $3,853.50 to live on. So the practical application of that is if your spouse is in the facility, all of your monthly income, yours and your spouse's, is still going to come to the bank account where it's coming. Nobody's going to take it. Nobody's going to change it. Nobody's going to deduct from it. It's going to keep paying to you. And then Medicaid is calculating the co-payment that will be paid to the facility each month. And in general, when an individual receives Medicaid, all of their monthly income is eligible to go as a co-payment. There are certain deductions. Again, not comprehensive video here, but you get to deduct personal needs, supplemental insurance premiums, Medicare premiums, and if you have a spouse in the community, you're deducting that spousal allowance to make sure that spouse has that $3,853.50 that the state of Texas thinks you need to survive.
Basically, anti-impoverishment rules. The state of Texas does not want to leave the spouse at home flat broke. That would be not what the state of Texas wants to do. It's not serving their purposes. So they want to make sure that you always keep your income and potentially get a portion of your spouse's income as well. We can't run the numbers for you. Every case is different. There's been many situations where there's a married couple where the spouse at the facility actually has no co-payment and all of the available income goes to the spouse at home. Can't speak about your case. I'm just letting you know those are possibilities.
Right, but for a spouse that's worried about getting care for their husband, or often husband, that I want them to know that it is not going to be based only on their income. They get to keep that much. The other time this applies well is because you don't touch the community spouse's income at home. That community spouse, for some reason, has very high income. Great. They get to keep that. They won't have a spousal allowance, but Medicaid doesn't look at what your income is if you're the spouse that's staying at home. So that's always going to be okay. Yeah, I think that can be used very well either way. If your income is low, if your income is high.
Yeah. This is next one. Now, this is one of my favorite topics. Let's say that either by mistake, chance, happenstance, or maybe part as a Medicaid plan, because you talk to an attorney and this is a plan, things have been given away or moved. Now, my general rule is I look at people and say, do not give your things away. There may be limited exceptions where I change my answer, But for the general rule, when your kids ask for your things, you should tell them no. One of the reasons is because, heaven forbid, our health deteriorates and we ever need a nursing home, right? People are like, oh, I'm never going to a nursing home. Well, it's not always voluntary, okay? The state of Texas will look back 5 years from the date in which you entered a facility looking for any transfers or any gifts. And can we just give our things away? How does that work, Kristen?
So if you've gifted something within 5 years of applying for Medicaid, Medicaid will presume that the gift was made to qualify for Medicaid. Sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not, but you start with the presumption that it was made to qualify for Medicaid, and Medicaid will penalize it. How do they penalize it? They have a set amount. It is $242.13 a day. So based on the gift that you've made, they will calculate that to be a certain number of days, and Medicaid will not pay during that period. So if I had $100,000, I gifted it to my child, Medicaid would use that factor there, calculate how many days they weren't going to pay, and because I'm under 2,000, I'm technically eligible for Medicaid, but I enter a period where Medicaid says you're eligible, but we are not paying the facility. You are being penalized for making this gift within 5 years.
Yeah, I decide that I'm going to keep a life estate and give the remainder interest to my children upon my death. I did not do this as a Lady Bird deed. I did this as traditional life estate. That would be a problem. That gift is a transferable penalty, basically, where they'll say, okay, you're approved, but we are not going to pay a certain number of days based upon the value of the gift.
Right, and there's a lot of areas where this is kind of, a trap for the unwary, where you don't realize it. And I think one of the dangers of us saying a single person has to be below $2,000 to be eligible. Well, you can't just get them there with anything, right? You can't take any funds they have above that and gift that to somebody. Now we've stepped into the penalty area. So if you find yourself in a situation where long-term care is something you might need, it does require some planning. It does need consideration of that 5-year look-back period or other options available to you. So it is not as simple as, oh, mom needs to be below $2,000. Great, I'll write myself a check for $10,000. Problem solved.
Yeah, and but having said that, we know that there are many rules and exceptions and ways in which those penalties, potential penalties, either cannot apply or be minimized.
Absolutely. So that is why you need an elder law attorney that does Medicaid applications on a daily and monthly basis, so they can help you through those things without creating additional problems.
Yep. Let's say I'm in the nursing home. I have all my co-payments, everything's worked out, but I'm allowed to keep a certain amount of monthly money of my income. Everything's supposed to go to the government.
Almost none.
Historically, I guess last year I could keep $60 a month. This year I am now keeping $75 a month. So it allows, at least for small things from the facility, beautician, things like that to get done.
Yeah, that is one of the deductions. So as Medicaid calculates your copayment, it's all of your gross income minus Medicare, minus supplemental insurance you're paying for, does not deduct for dental insurance, does not deduct for life insurance, deducts just for supplemental health insurance or drug insurance, and then you get to keep $75.
That's right.
And that's again what the state has decided that you need on a monthly basis to pay for clothing, hair, all the other things that Medicaid isn't paying for.
Basically,
probably not true.
Yeah, incidentals. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the value of our home? As we all know in Texas, our home, generally speaking, is an exempt asset, though we may want to consider doing a Lady Bird deed. But we know when we're applying at the outset, most of the times our home is safe unless or until it's worth.
Sure. So the value of a home this year can be up to $713,000. So for most people, this doesn't hit you where it matters. Your residence plus any contiguous acreage. So you could have 250 acres with your home. That's all exempt as your residence. As long as when you walk out your front door, you can hit that property without touching anybody else's land. So it could be across a road, whatever. It just has to qualify as your residence, and on the tax rolls be less than $713,000. So that's where we're going to take our fair market value from. We can rely upon that to set the value. So for most of us, that's not going to be a problem. If your home is valued at more than that, you certainly need to be looking at how to pre-plan for that and protecting that, probably using an asset protection trust, which we'll probably have some videos on in the future.
And of course, don't forget, you have a $200,000 home. You have a strip of private property owned by someone else. You have another $200,000 set of acreage. You have two acreages together, home and land, worth $400,000. You're in trouble because while the maximum may be $713,000, it must be touching. So just be aware of that. I've had people say, well, Chris, I'm way under the limit. Not a problem. It's a problem. Unless it's touching, it's a problem.
Yeah, good point. Those are things that can trip you up. If it's not your residence, it's separate real property, that's countable. If it's in a revocable living trust, it's now countable. It's not your residence. There's some other just things that can trip you up that you probably didn't see coming. It's and unfortunately, there's really just not a lot of information on the internet about this. This is not one where I feel like you can go educate yourself and apply correctly. It's just one where you need an expert.
If you've got a living trust, a revocable trust, any kind of trust, you probably need to see an attorney.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are some advantages actually that pop up, but you need to see an attorney.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, what numbers have gone up also in our favor?
Yeah, so just some other kind of fun ones that I thought were worth mentioning here. 2023 Part B for Medicare was $164.90. You probably don't realize this. It's deducted directly out of your Social Security check. This year it will be $174.70. So a slight increase there, but Social Security went up this year 3.2% as your cost of living adjustment. So that probably covers it, but you probably got your explanation of benefits in December from Social Security, showed you that slight increase, and whether you noticed it or not, showed you the slight increase in the Medicare deduction that is also coming out of Social Security. So, yeah, 2024 numbers in a nutshell there.
Thanks for tuning in, y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy 2024. Hope it's a great year. If we can help you, we do have resources for facilities. We have those 2024 numbers available. It's not on our website, but if you email us, we can send it to you as a helpful guide, and glad to help with anything we can. Bye.